All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us for today's Grandstream IP phone training webinar. My name is Phil Bowers. I'm joined by Abdel, who will take you through the actual training part of the webinar. I've got a little 10, 15, 20-minute introduction here. I'm going to tell you about our entire range of award-winning IP phones, what makes each model so great, kind of who each one's for, and then we will bring in Abdel to go through the web user interface of a couple of the phones, show you how to set them up, take advantage of a lot of the great features through the product's web user interface. So to get going here, I got a little quick introduction I'm going to give you basically to highlight all of our award-winning IP phones. One of the greatest things about Grandstream, obviously we're very well known. We're a top 3 or 4 manufacturer in the world, depending on who you talk to in terms of open source IP phones. We have an entire solution, entire portfolio of IP phones, ranging from basic IP phones to high-end to video phone to cordless to conferencing. So I'll tell you about all those models real quickly, and then we will go right into the training. So let's get started. As I mentioned, one of the, not just specifically IP phones, one of the greatest things about Grandstream is that we are a one-stop shop for all of your SIP endpoint needs, whether it be IP phones, whether it be physical security products, cameras, facility access solutions, network video recorders, to back-end solutions, including gateways and ATAs, IP PBX appliances, as well as voice and video conferencing products. We are your one-stop shop. We are every SIP solution that anyone needs to build a complete business communications solution is available from us here at Grandstream. So we offer a one-stop shop for every type of SIP device that you're going to need on any deployment. All right, so we're going to start off by going through our most popular series of IP phones. This is also our longest running series of IP phones, the GXP series. The GXP series has been in existence off the top of my head now for at least 10 years. It has evolved over the years. There's been numerous different series within the GXP series, and what we currently have and what we currently offer for the GXP series are here in front of you. We have our 1600 series of basic IP phones, our 1700 series of mid-range IP phones, and the GXP 2100 series of high-end IP phones. We'll go through quickly each series, what makes each one great, and then we will follow up with our video phones, our DECT phones, Grandstream Wave, our soft phone app, and GAC 2500, our conferencing device. So the GXP series of 1600, or excuse me, the GXP 1600 series of basic IP phones, they are ideal for those that need simple, easy to use IP phones for areas that need access to VoIP but do not require advanced features. These devices are built to be simple and easy to use. Somewhat of a streamlined interface, but again, they're simple, easy to use phones for people that simply need access to VoIP but don't need advanced features. Basic VoIP features and truly an entry-level market-leading price. You're not going to find a better quality IP phone from any manufacturer in the world for a better price than what you're going to get with our GXP 1600 series. And frankly, that positioning kind of applies to all of our devices in general. One of the great things about Grandstream IP phones, one of the things we're best known for, is providing a really high-value solution in terms of IP phones, giving you a lot of features, more features and more functionality for the price than what you're going to get from any other manufacturer. So the 1600 series is broken up into 6 different models. We have the GXP 1610 and 1615 on the left. That series, or excuse me, those 2 models are going to give you one line, one SIP account, and the difference between the device does not offer HD audio, and the difference between the 1615 and the 1610 is that the 1615 offers built-in PoE where the 1610 does not. Then we have the 1620 and the 1625. Those bump you up to 2 lines, gives you HD audio, and the difference between the 1620 and the 1625 is the 1625 has built-in power over Ethernet. Then we move up to the high end of the 1600 series. These are what I would call entry-level gigabit IP phones, the 1628 and the 1630. They both going to give you gigabit speeds. The 1628 gives you 2 lines and 2 SIP accounts. The 1630 gives you 3 lines and 3 SIP accounts. Again, entry-level gigabit IP phones giving you the gigabit speeds. The other 1600 series models gives you your standard 10, 100 megabits per second speeds. And the 1620 and the 1630, 1628 and 1630 also add 8 hard BLF keys, as you can see on the right side of the phone. So that's the 1600 series. Again, ideal for places, any situation, any deployment that needs access to VoIP but does not really need high-end phones. And where that comes in are what you see here on the screen. Lobbies. Hotels is one of the biggest users of basic IP phones anywhere in the world. Most countries have a law that requires hotels need to have phones in guest rooms, and the 1600 series are ideal for that, 1- and 2-line phones. Residential, certain office users, schools, warehouses, service industry, retail shops, places that need access to VoIP, that need to be able to make and receive calls, but that don't need those high-end features. So let's move up to the 1700 series of mid-range IP phones. These are newer IP phones. They have been on the market for about a year from us, and they were really designed for growing businesses. They give you the mid-range features and capacity that your business can grow with at a very attractive design, which is something you'll see coming up, at an entry-level price that you need now. So it's basically a device that can grow with your business. So it's a really attractive, very high-end design phone with mid-range capacity and features at an entry-level price. So as you see there, a really high-end modern design, mid-range capacity, and a near entry-level price. And you see the look of these here. Definitely a step up in terms of design from the 1600 series to the 1700 series. Really high-end hardware design, giving you mid to high call capacity, and a variety of comprehensive features, including HD audio, including gigabit on a couple of the models, and including PoE at a near entry-level price. So as you can see here, one of the best things about these mid-range IP phones is that they offer you digitally programmable BLF speed dial keys, which means that you can actually turn the screen of your phone in addition to what you would normally use it for, but also into BLF speed dial keys. And as you see, the 1780 and the 1782, which feature 4 lines, are going to give you 32 digital BLF speed dial keys, 8 keys on a page with a total of 4 pages. The GXP 1760, which gives you 3 lines, I believe, we'll have that on the next slide, gives you 24 digital BLF speed dial keys, so that's 6 per page for and a total of 4 pages. So again, to break down the models for you, the 1760 is a 6-line IP phone, gives you 3 SIP accounts, and uses standard 10, 100 megabit per second ports, does offer you built-in power over Ethernet. 1780 and the 1782, those are both 8-line phones, support up to 4 SIP accounts, and give the 1782, difference between the 80 and the 82 is the 1782 gives you dual gigabit ports. They're all going to give you HD audio, and they're all going to give you built-in power over Ethernet and 5-way voice conferencing. So that's the 1700 series. Again, really ideal for growing businesses, businesses that need an attractive phone with calling capacity and features that they can grow with at an entry-level price. Startups is really the best one for it, but also retail shops, offices, service industry, schools, warehouses, places where the public is going to be, around your location. You want to give off a good impression with a really attractive-looking phone without the high-end price, basically at an entry-level price, and that's what the mid-range IP phones are ideal for. So let's keep moving along here with the GXP 2100 series. Here we have the high end of the GXP 2100 series, of the GXP series, which are these GXP 2100 series phones. These are really built for high-end users that handle a lot of calls and need access to advanced VoIP features. So you can see from the description, they allow you to get more done, handle more calls, and keep in touch with more people. They are designed for users who are often on the phone, need access to advanced features, line support, usability options. They're going to give you state-of-the-art features, as we'll go through on the next couple of slides. Really the highest capacity that we can offer in terms of your standard desktop IP phone. One of the best things about all of these models is the mobile device integration through Bluetooth that they offer. So here is a quick look at all of the models within the GXP 2100 series. The 2130, 2135, 2140, and 2160. The really biggest point of differentiation between these models is what you see there on the top two lines, the lines and SIP accounts that they offer. You're going to get from 3 up to 12 lines and 3 up to 6 SIP accounts, depending on which model you choose. The 2135 and the 2170 were introduced after the other 3 models. So we were able to optimize those to actually offer you 8 and 12 lines. So if you're looking for support for as many lines as possible, the 2170 and the 2135 are what you're looking for. A couple of these models, specifically the 2160, as you can see in the picture, has 24 hard BLF speed dial keys on the right. The 2135 and 2170, just like the 1700 series, have your digital programmable BLF speed dial keys, which means you can actually turn the phone screen into a BLF or a speed dial page in addition to what you would usually use it for. The 2140 and the 2170 are compatible with our GXP 2200 extension module, which we will highlight in just a little while. All of these devices feature full color screen operating systems. They all give you Bluetooth support, which is something I always like to point out. A lot of manufacturers today will claim Bluetooth support on their phones, and when they say that, 9 out of 10 times they mean only for Bluetooth headsets. We obviously support Bluetooth headsets, but we also allow you to pair, for example, Bluetooth mobile devices with these phones, which allows you to actually transfer calls back and forth, get a call on one device, transfer it to the other and back. And also allows you to sync things like contact books and calendars with your mobile devices through Bluetooth for these phones. So it really allows you to take advantage of a lot of the tools and information you have on those mobile devices on your desktop IP phone. So again, really great for anybody that's going to need advanced features, is on the phone a lot, receptionists, administrators, executives, medical offices, customer service, the ability to handle a lot of lines, transfer a lot of calls, et cetera, as well as a lot of office workers. So that is our GXP series, the 1600 series, 1700 series, and 2100 series, basic, mid-range, and high-end. Just to kind of demonstrate, we went through the differences, but really the biggest difference is the lines and the features that they offer as you move up. The 1600 series, basic features, basic line support. 1700 series, more mid-range capacity, high-end design at a closer to an entry-level price than our 2100 series, giving you all the advanced VoIP features, the ability to integrate mobile devices, color screens, gigabit speed on all models. All right, so let's wrap up with talking about the GXP 2100 series, or excuse me, the GXP series, our best known IP phones, been out for a while. We also are one of the global leaders in IP video phones, continuing on through our portfolio of IP phones. Depending on who you talk to, you'll find out that our GXP 3275, which you see here, and 3240 on the next screen, are either the second or the third best-selling IP video phones in the world. These devices are really unique devices. The way I like to explain them is that they basically are 3-in-1 combination devices. They combine the functionality of an Android tablet or an Android smartphone. These are open Android-based devices, full access to the Google Play Store, the ability to sync with any Google account or any Android or frankly even iPhone device, although Android's a little bit optimized for it. So it gives you that Android functionality, Android tablet functionality. It also gives you a 6-line IP phone, and it gives you a desktop video conferencing or video calling solution. See built-in camera, full access to the Google Play Store, as well as and any video or chatting app within there or communications app, in addition to any SIP-to-SIP video call. This 3275 gives you a 7-inch touchscreen, 6 lines, 5-way audio conferencing, free built-in SIP video calling functionality, full access to the Android or to the Google Play Store. Also gives you a lot of high-end features, Wi-Fi, PoE, Bluetooth, same Bluetooth features I talked about on the 2100 series apply here, USB, SD card slot, mini HDMI output, EHS functionality for Plantronics headsets, etc., etc. The other device in the GXP video phone series is a 3240, which you see here. The two devices, the 3240 and the 3275 from the previous screen, are pretty much exactly the same. The only difference is, do you want a 4.3-inch touchscreen with hard keys, or do you want a full 7-inch touchscreen with no hard keys? That's really the difference between those two models. So those are our IP video phones. Now we will wrap up here with our decked IP phones, then go through Grandstream Wave, and I think our GAC, and then we'll get into the technical training. So real fast, if you're looking for a cordless VoIP solution, you need to mobilize people around your office or home. Our DP7 or our DP series of decked cordless IP phones are exactly what you're looking for. Going to give you, just like the rest of our IP phones, really high-end feature set at a very attainable price. So we have the DP750, which is the base station, and then we have the DP720. Apologize for a couple things I meant to delete on that slide that you can see on there, which is the handset. So the DP750 would pair with up to 5 of the DP720 handsets, which I just showed you. Gives you the ability to support up to 10 SIP accounts that can be shared throughout those 5 devices, integrated PoE. Gives you a 300-meter range outdoors, 50-meter range indoors. We're actually coming out in the next couple of months with a decked repeater, which will actually give you the ability to pair that repeater with this DP750 to actually double the range, up to 600 meters outdoors, 100 meters indoors. So again, that is our series of decked cordless IP phones, full color screen operating system, headset jack, HD audio, 5 DP720 handsets compare with each DP750 base station. So just to wrap up here, I mentioned this earlier, our GXP 2200 extension module. It pairs, as you see on the slide, with our 2140, 2170 from the GXP series and the GXP 3240, one of our Android IP video phones. You can pair 4 of these devices, which each one of those phones, each extension module gives you, trying to remember this off the top of my head, there we go, 40 contacts per unit, up to 4 total pages, or up to 4 total units for 160 extensions. Each unit has 20 contacts on each page with a total of 2 pages. Full LCD backlit extension module. Works with the 2140, 2170, 3240. Grandstream Wave, always worth mentioning. It is our free Android and iOS softphone app. Gives you the ability to access any SIP account. Any SIP account. Doesn't have to be just registered to a Grandstream phone or Grandstream PBX on any Android or iOS mobile device. It offers a variety of features that make it very easy to set up, very easy to pair, especially if you're an if you're an ITSP. We give you the ability to actually load your accounts into this device so that when your customers set it up, all they have to do is enter in a login, for example, and you can get their SIP account set up right on Android or iOS device. So if you're looking to access SIP calls on any mobile device that runs Android or iOS, Grandstream Wave is a free app available from the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. Grandstream Affinity is a new computer telephony integration software that we offer. It basically gives you the ability to control everything about your Grandstream GXP 2100 series or GXP 700 series IP phone on your desktop using software, whether it be making a call, receiving a call, transferring a call, adding contacts, etc. It can all be done through this free software, which can be downloaded on our website under Tools. Just to point it out, this currently only works with the 2100 and 1700 series. Last thing that I'm going to mention here today, last phone in our portfolio, our GAC 2500 audio conferencing phone. This is, if you're familiar with our video conferencing devices, This device is based on Android, gives you full access to the Google Play Store. Really is another great combination device that gives you obviously an audio conferencing device, an Android tablet, all built in with a six-line conferencing that gives you 7-way audio conferencing support, 6 different SIP accounts, dual gigabit network ports, built-in power over Ethernet, integrated Bluetooth to pair it with a Bluetooth mobile device or headset, also has USB, works on Wi-Fi, gives you the ability to really use it from anywhere and use a lot of different apps or platforms because it is OpenSIP and runs Android. All right, so with that, that wraps up my introduction. And let's turn it over to Abdel, who will take you through the technical training part of today's webinar. Just bear with us here for a second as we transfer control of the presentation over to Abdel. There we go.
All right, thank you, Phil. This is Abdel. For the second part of this webinar, I'm just going to navigate through the web interface of the GXP phone. For today's webinar, I'm using the GXP 2170. So when you get the phone, of course, the first thing you want to ensure is that you have the latest firmware version on your phone. You can check that one under the system info, under the status page, then look for the program version. For my phone, I'm using the latest official firmware version, which is 1.0.9.25. So the first step in configuring any phone, of course, is setting up the SIP account. As you notice, the GXP phone can support up to 6 SIP accounts. So I'm just going to use one of these accounts, account number 1. The account name, you can enter the extension number, or you can just enter the name that you would like to be displayed on the phone. So for example, if you would like to enter the name that you want it to be displayed on the LCD screen, just enter the name and then include the IP address of the SIP server or the IP PBX. If you have a secondary SIP server for failover, just make sure you include the IP. Let's say I have another server with .90. The outbound proxy, that depends whether your carrier or your provider supports the outbound proxy. If they don't support the outbound proxy, you can just go ahead and leave it blank. For the SIP account, this is where you enter the SIP username. For example, I'm using extension 1016 with authenticate ID with the same extension number, then include the SIP password associated with that extension. Then under the name, that's the caller ID name that the phone actually sends when you call from that specific phone. If you would like to send your name as a caller ID name, just type it in there under name. For the voicemail access number, all the phones, they come with a voicemail button. If you would like to configure that one to access your voicemails, just include the feature code that is used by your SIP server or your IP PBX. If you're using the UCM, by default is *97. So after you make the changes, make sure you click on Save and Apply Changes for them to take effect. So after you have the account, you can always check the status of your registration by clicking on Status, then go to Account Status, so you can check whether the SIP registration was done successfully. So after we have the account registered, there are plenty of other settings that you can configure on the GXP phone. And one of them is the dial plan. The phone, by default, it comes with these 4 patterns. If you want to add more patterns, just click on Add. Then you have some options like pattern. Pattern is basically the dial plan that you want the phone to use. Or you can use the block pattern. For example, you have users that call the 900 numbers. You can actually include the dial plan with 1-900-XXX with 100-XXX, and then call it block, or you can just, it's a name that you can customize. This way, when the users, they try to dial any number that starts with 1-900, the phone is going to block that call. It's not going to tell them call is blocked. It's just going to give them a busy tone, or it's going to tell them, for example, some type of those error messages on the phone. You also have the option dial now. Let's say, for example, the phones, by default, they have the no key entry timeout of 4 seconds, which means when you pick up the handsets and you start dialing, the phone will always wait 4 seconds before it sends whatever you dialed. For example, if you have internet extensions and you are using 4 digits and all the extension range they start with 1, you can configure the phone, for example, every time you dial a number that starts with 1 with a range of 4 digits, once you dial 4 digits, the phone is going to send it automatically without waiting for the inter-digit timeout or the no key entry timeout. So all the settings, all the dial plans that you configure under this page, they will be updated under the core settings, and we're going to come to that one later. The network settings, this is where you configure some configuration about DNS record in case your carrier are using a domain name. You can use the A record, or you can use the SRV record. Many carriers, they use the SRV record, commonly used with the SIP configuration. An SRV record is essentially a type of DNS record used to specify not only the IP address of the domain name, like in the A record, but it also includes a port number for a specific service, let's say like the SIP service. So if your carrier is using a domain name with an SRV, make sure you go to network settings and you set that one to SRV. Then you have some other options like the NAT traversal. If you have a remote phone, like you have this phone configured remotely, I would recommend you use the keep alive. This way the phone will always send an empty UDP packet to the router to keep that connection open. If you're using VPN, let's say OpenVPN on the GXP phone, which is supported, make sure you set the NAT traversal to VPN. This way it's going to work with the OpenVPN server. Moving to the SIP settings, you have some basic settings, like SIP registration. The phones usually are most commonly used for SIP registration, so make sure you leave that one checked to yes. Then you have some other settings like register expiration, subscribe expiration. When you need to change those, for example, when you have a phone configured remotely and you notice that the phone keeps losing registration, this could be related to some NATing issue. If that's the case, I would recommend you reduce that one, or you decrease it from 60 minutes to 2 minutes. So this way the phone will always try to register every other minute. The same thing for the subscribe expiration. When you have the BLF monitoring not changing properly, you can decrease down to 2. So you have that option, or the second option is you can enable the SIP options keep alive. When you set that one to yes, the phone will automatically send a SIP option message every 30 seconds. This option depends whether your SIP server supports the SIP option message. So before you check that one, make sure your IPPBX or your SIP server actually does support the SIP option. Then next you have some other options here, like in case you're using UDP or your carrier, they told you to use GCP or TCP TLS. This is where you make those changes. So next we move to advanced features. The main setting that I would like to talk about in this page is the event list BLF. A lot of people are more familiar with the BLF that allows you to monitor the status or the call status of users configured in the MPKs. However, the BLF feature can create a lot of overhead when trying to subscribe for the status of a large number of resources. That is when you can use event list BLF instead as the resolution to solve the overhead problem. The way eventless BLF works is instead of generating an individual subscribe request for each resource status, like in the regular BLF feature, the concept of the eventless BLF is combining all of those requests into a single request that query the resources status from the event list. This way it saves you a lot of bandwidth. Eventless BLF can be configured if you're using, for example, a UCM. I have a UCM here, 6202. So I'm just going to show you quickly how you can configure the eventless BLF. You just go to Call Features, then look for Event List, and then create a new event list. Just give it a name. You can choose any name that you want. Sales, for example. Then I'm going to choose the group of extensions that I would like them to be part of this event list BLF. Select all the extensions that you want. Put them under the selected area. You can also include remote extensions. And this is also one of the second advantages of using eventless BLF is that you can monitor, for example, if you have UCM-A with paired with UCM-B, and you have a phone registered to UCM-A, you can actually monitor the extensions on UCM-B from that phone registered to UCM-A. That's the only way to do it, because if you want to use the regular BLF, it's not going to monitor extensions from other UCMs. So the way it works is just create an eventless BLF. For the remote extensions to be populated here, you need to make sure that the peer trunk between the two UCMs has the LDAP sync enabled. So when you have the LDAP sync enabled and the sync complete successfully, the list of all the extensions on the other UCM, they're going to populate here, so you can include extensions from UCM-B on this UCM. So remember, we have configured the URI cells for the event list. So what we need to do is just go to the phone and then include the URI, which is the name that we just entered on the UCM, call it sales, save, and apply. It gives you two options here, auto-provision eventless BLF to be enabled or disabled. So when you enable the auto-provision of eventless BLF, you actually tell the UCM to dictate where to place each BLF on the phone. You can always have eventless BLF enabled, but without using the auto-provision from, let's say, the UCM. This way, when you go to the phone, let's say I have that one enabled, and I have set up the URI, I can just go to the NPK, and then I can choose the order of the eventless BLF. I can just, for example, choose the eventless mode, which is right here, associated with account 1. Then I can choose any name. Let's say this is the extension of Steve. I'm going to include 2003. Save and apply. Excuse me. So this way the eventless BLF is going to function, but when you have the auto provision disabled, that gives you more control over where to place each BLF on the NPKs. And one thing about the eventless BLF is that after you configure the eventless BLF, make sure you reboot the phone, because it only takes effect after rebooting the phone. Next, we're going to move to the security settings on the phone. Some of the settings here are useful, especially when you receive or your client complains about receiving ghost calls. A ghost call is basically a call that rings your phone, but when you go and you answer the call, there is no one on the other end of the call. So if you keep receiving that type of calls, that could indicate that your phone is receiving some ghost calls. And this could be related to someone scanning your network. So if you have that type of issues, there are two settings that I would recommend to enable on the phone. The first one is accept incoming SIP from proxy only. Make sure you set that to yes. And the one on top of it, which is check SIP user ID for incoming invites. Save and apply changes. The audio settings, this is where you configure the codecs. By default, the phones they use the PCMU as the default one, the one on top of the list. If your carrier, for example, they use a different codec, let's say G729, just make sure you set that one to G729. Then you have call settings. We talked about the dial plan. All the changes that you make under the dial plan page, they're going to update automatically under this box right here. Then you have plenty of other options. The phones, they come with their own default ringtones. You can always change these ringtones. If you don't like them and you have your own that you would like to upload to the phone, just click on the, for example, the system ringtone and just upload your ringtone. The phone supports the WAV format of the sound file, and make sure that the size does not exceed 500 kilobytes. You can do the same thing with the system ringtone, or you can change the ringtone 1, 2, and also 3. Next, we have the intercom settings. Excuse me. So sometimes you intercom the phone and you notice that the phone, instead of auto answer, it just keeps ringing. If you have that type of issue, make sure you come to the accounts that you're trying to page on intercom, click on intercom settings, and go to this setting and set that one to yes. This way the phone will know when there's a paging or an intercom call, it's going to auto answer automatically. The phones by default, they use their own local call features. Sometimes if you're using the IPPBX, you would like to use the call features from the IPPBX, you can just simply set these to no. So for example, when you do call forwarding with star 72 and you have that one set to yes, it's actually the phone that is doing call forwarding. If you would like to do call forwarding at the level of the IPPBX, make sure you set that one to no. One of the features that were added in the latest firmware version is the account swap. As I told you, the phone supports 6 accounts. Sometimes you configure account 1 as 1, then another account 2. Then the users, they might tell you, we want account 3 to become account 1 and account 1 to become account 3. You just click on account swap, choose account 1, for example, and then you can swap it with a different account based on what on their requirements or their needs. Next, we're going to move to the settings. Under general settings, it gives information like what is the local RTP port for the phone. The account 1 is using port 5004. In case you want the phone to use random ports, you can set that one to yes instead of using the SIP, the default SIP port, which is 5060 for account 1. You also have the option to enable the public mode. The public mode, or what they call the hot desking feature. When you set the phone on public mode, the phone is there, but it doesn't have any extension registered. So you can set it on a public mode, then you can give the users an extension with a SIP password. So for them to log into the phone, they just need to click on login, then enter the SIP extension and the SIP password associated with that extension. And they can use that phone for the period of time that they are logged in. When they're done, they just need to click on log out so that another user can use his or her extension with their SIP password. Call features, there are a lot of options here. Some of them, like call waiting, by default is disabled. Call waiting is enabled. If you would like to disable call waiting, just check that one to yes. Call waiting is when you talk and then you receive a second incoming call. If that feature is not wanted, for example, by your clients, you can just disable that one. Then you have plenty of other options that depends whether you will need them or not. The user manual explains all these features and how you can change them, or you can just hover over the feature. Then there is the tooltip that tells you exactly what that feature does. Call history, this is where you have access to the call history that were made to and from the phone. There's multicast paging. In case you would like to use these phones for paging and your IP PBX, or you don't have a SIP server that supports paging, you can actually use the phones to page without the need to use an IP PBX. So I'm going to show you an example of how you can configure multicast paging. The first thing that you need to do is to choose an IP. It should be a multicast IP address on which the phone is going to be listening. And the range of IP addresses that you can use is 224.0.0.0 up to 239.255.255.255. So the range of IP should be within that range. I mean, the IP should be within that range. So let's say, for example, I'm going to choose 226.226.226. Then I'm going to choose port 6565. Make sure you are using a port that is not being used by the phone. Then I can call that one multicast paging number 1, for example. So when you configure the multicast paging on the phone, you actually tell the phone to always listen on this multicast IP on that specific port. So when the phone is listening on that multicast IP with that specific port, you can use, for example, another phone, and then you can configure multicast paging. Just look for multicast paging, account 1. Then you can call it, for example, multicast paging 1. And then you should include the same value, which means the same multicast IP, together with the port number 6565, and then save. So when you have that configured on the phone, just by pressing the MPK8, the remote, one of the phones is going to page the phone that is configured to listen on that specific multicast IP and with that specific port. You can configure a group of phones. Just make sure they're using the same multicast IP and the same port. If you want to use another multicast paging group, just make sure you use a different multicast IP. Here it's under the virtual multi-purpose keys. As you notice, we have supports plenty of modes: the shared line, speed dial, BLF, presence watcher, event list. So let's say I would like to use, for example, MPK9 for call park. I just choose the monitored call park mode, set the account to 1, then I can call it call park, and then I can choose an extension of the call park, let's say 701.7, then save it. Then it's going to show, so the phone is always going to be monitoring the call park extension 701. I can create as many call parks as required or as allowed by the IP PBX. Next we have the soft keys. And now you have the option where you can customize your soft keys. Just make sure when you would like to change the layout of the soft keys, make sure the custom soft key layout is set to enable. So let's say, for example, I would like to change the ringing state. When the phone rings, I would like to change which soft key should show up when the phone is ringing. I can, for example, remove the reconference and include the silence, so that when the phone rings, I can have the option to silence the ring, to silence the ringing of the phone. Just save and apply, and as I told you, make sure you have the custom soft key layout set to enable, save and apply, and the layout will apply to the phone. Next, the extension board. As Phil mentioned earlier, the 2170 can support up to 4 extension boards, and each extension board supports 2 pages. You can use the 2 pages. In case you would like only to use the first page, just make sure you set that one to yes, save and apply, and the extension board, instead of supporting 40 contacts, it's going to only support 20 on the first page. So the same thing, we have configured the VPKs. You can use the extension. You configure the extension boards. Just make sure you choose the right mode. If you're using speed dial via active call, just include the name. For example, this is Harvey. I'm just going to include the name and then enter, and then enter the contact information of Harvey. Then I can have up to 160 MPKs configured depending on which mode I choose and which information or which value I included. The web service, this is where you configure the weather. Most phones, they detect the weather by the IP. Sometimes you might not get the correct city where you are located. If that's the case, you can just choose the self-defined city code. We don't use codes anymore. For example, if you're in Dallas, you can just include Dallas, comma, and then Texas. And this way the phone will automatically look for the weather updates of Dallas in Texas. Save and apply. You have the currency. If you would like to show that one, just leave it as yes. If you would like to disable it, set it to no. Next is the network configuration of the phone. This is where you configure the phone to support IPv4 or IPv6 or both. Or in case you would like to assign static IP address to the phone, you just click on static configured as and just enter the information like the IP, the subnet mask, the gateway IP, and make sure also you include the DNS server. We talked about GS Affinity, the CTI application or CTI solution that you can install in your computer. You can install that one just by going to Grandstream, click on Support, Tools, and then you can download the application that you would like to upload to your computer. You have the user guide that explains to you exactly how to use that application with the GXP phones. The phones, as mentioned earlier, they support OpenVPN, so in case you have an OpenVPN server and you would like to connect the phone to the OpenVPN server for confidentiality, just make sure you sit down with yes, then you can include the public IP address of your OpenVPN server. Make sure you include the proper or the correct port number that is used by the OpenVPN server. And then you have the, by default, most of OpenVPN servers, they use UDP. In case your server is using TCP, just make sure you switch between or you toggle between these two. And this is where you configure the CA certificate, the client certificate, and the private key. Just click on upload and then browse to the file, the certificate file, and then upload it to the phone. If your Open server is using a different encryption method, you can just choose from the available 4 options that you have here. If they have, the Open server has a username and password, just include the username and password. Save and apply, then reboot the phone. To know that the phone is actually connected through the OpenVPN, make sure you go to status, network status, and make sure that the phone gets an IP address actually from the Open server. You're going to see it right here, probably 10.10.0, whatever IP you are using. Next, the maintenance. This is where you change the user ID and the admin password, which I recommend once you get the phone and you enter the admin password, make sure you change that one so that nobody can have access to the phones and start messing with the configuration. Next, you have the upgrade and provisioning. Now we started supporting the manual upgrade of the firmware file on the phone instead of just using HTTP or TFTP provisioning. You can actually get the firmware file from the Grandstream website. You can just go to support, firmware, and then choose the firmware file of your phone. Once downloaded, make sure you unzip it to get the binary file and just go to the phone, start, then browse to the firmware file and then start your upgrade. By default, the phone Every time it reboots, it's going to look for if there's a new firmware. If you would like to disable that process, make sure you check that one so that the phone does not look for a new firmware during the upgrade. And then you have some other options. Let me talk just about a few of them, like 3CX auto provision. The zero config, for example, if you have a UCM, Grandstream UCM, you have zero config enabled, and you are provisioning phones with zero config, and for example, you have that specific phone that you don't want it to be provisioned with zero config, just make sure you set that one to no. Because when you set that one to yes, every time the phone reboots, it's going to send a subscribe message to a multicast address on which the UCM is listening all the time. So every time there's a subscribe message on that multicast IP, the UCM is going to respond with the configuration. Next, you have the configuration path and then the firmware server path.
I gotta run all of this.
So for the configuration, you have three options. You can use a TFTP, HTTP, or HTTPS. For the config server path, for example, say I'm using zero config to provision my phone. If you have a different configuration, let's say you have an XML file configured for, I don't know, for a group of phones, just make sure you include the IP address of the TFTP or HTTP server. It could be an IP address or domain name. If you have the file, for example, configured with a username and password, like so that you can protect the file on the server, just make sure you include the username and password. You can actually download the device configuration. You can also download the user configuration, or you can actually export the backup package. The backup actually includes all the information. For example, if you are using auto recording on the phone, so when you do the backups, actually uploads the recording, the call history, and all the information that's in the phone. When you do the download device configuration, you're actually only uploading or downloading the configuration of the phone. For the firmware server path, the same thing as the config server path. Choose the upgrade via, whether you are using TFTP, HTTP, or HTTPS, and then just enter the path under the firmware server path. If you have the firmware file protected with a username and password, just include that information in there. Save and apply, and then reboot the phone. Then the phone would automatically look for the configuration or the firmware file. The phones, they support syslog in case you're doing some troubleshooting that are not related to SIP traffic, for example. It's always useful to have a syslog. If you call, for example, the technical support of Grandstream, we might ask you to provide us with syslog from the phone. It's very simple. If you have a syslog server, that's good. If not, you can just install, for example, Wireshark on one of the computers. Then you can point the phone to send all the traffic. Let's say this is the IP address of my laptop on which I'm running Wireshark. I can just put the IP address of my laptop in there and have Wireshark running, then set the privilege level to debug, and make sure you set that one to yes, because usually we would like to see the SIP logs too. Then save and apply. So when you save and apply, make sure you reboot the phone. Sometimes the syslog that only takes effect after rebooting the phone. If you have issues related to SIP messages, for example, hey, I make a call, but there's only one-way audio, this is something that we can analyze through the packet capture, which means you only capture the IP traffic. If you are requested to provide a packet capture, just make sure you set that one to, you can use internal storage or USB drive, it's up to you. If there's an issue with audio, make sure you set that one to yes, because we would like to see the RTP traffic. Then just start the trace, then replicate the issue that you were describing, for example, in your ticket. Once you're done, stop, download, and then attach the file to either an email or ticket, depending on what type of communication you are using to report your issue. Finally, I'm going to wrap up with the phone book configuration. There are 3 ways how you can populate the phone with contact information. The first one, you can do manual configuration, which means go to the phone, add contact, then enter first name, last name, company, and all that information. You can also upload a ringtone to be specifically for that contact, which means when this contact calls into the phone is going to ring differently based on what ringtone you have uploaded from here. The second option is using the XML configuration phone book. This is useful, for example, when you have contacts from your Gmail account or Google account, and then you download these contacts as a CSV file, and you would like to upload them to the phone without the need to enter each contact manually. You can do that. Just for example, download your CSV file from any application. Then make sure you go to Grandstream website, support, tools, and then there is a tool right here that you can use actually to generate an XML configuration file. Just go to Universal Phone Book. This is the tool, and it comes also with the user guide that you can download and read so you can learn how to use this tool. It's very simple. Just click on it, upload it, run it, then upload your CSV file, and then tell the tool to convert it into XML file. So when you have the XML file, you have the option to upload it to the phone. You can just come here, upload, and it's going to upload the XML, the contact information in the XML file. Save and apply. If you are using zero config, for example, if you have multiple phones, instead of going to each phone, you can actually do it from the UCM. The same option is available from zero config. Just go to zero config, then upload the XML configuration that includes all the contact information, and then provision it to all the phones. The third option that you have is LDAP. You can configure the phone actually to get the LDAP or the contact information from the LDAP server. The UCM, as you might know, supports LDAP server. So in case you have all the information from the UCM, you can just go to System Settings, LDAP server, then go to LDAP phone book, then phone book download configuration. When you click on this, the UCM gives you a template how you need to configure the phone. Just go to number 2 that tells you LDAP configurations example on Grandstream phone. Just make sure you copy the same thing on your phone. Especially when we talk about the attributes and the filters, you can simply copy and paste in the phone. Make sure there's no space or nothing. Just copy, paste it on the phone, then point the phone. For example, if you're using the UCM and the IP address of the UCM is .62, you can just put it right there and start copy and paste all the base DN and the filters and attributes into the phone. Save and apply, and every time there is a phone coming into your phone, you're going to actually see the contact information, which includes the caller ID number and then the name associated with that caller ID. I think we have covered most of the stuff available on the GXP phones. Of course, there are plenty of things that unfortunately we don't have the time to go into them with details. There are going to be some other webinars in the future, and thank you again for joining this webinar.